This video is going to show you Soulfall's Grasp of Avarice dungeon during the season of the Seraph, using a unique build with the Grafalcon exotic chestplate for the Void Hunter, and also a machine gun build to complement that. So it's a DPS build for machine gun, specifically for that. This is a very unique circumstance that's basically came with this setup. So the Grafalcon obviously was bugged when it first came out, and they disabled it and all that stuff, right? And then they brought it back, but they've changed it since. It gives you volatile rounds after invisibility, which changes things massively. It means you can reliably proc volatile rounds from this build, which opens up a lot of things. So now I'm not going to give you much talk or chatter about the open mechanics on Grasp of Avarice. If you're unsure, then you just ask. But I'm speeding up the footage for editing purposes because I haven't got much to talk about this dungeon until we get to the bosses. It's very interesting, but other than that, we're just making our way through the puzzles. So if you're not sure on how to do that, then you would ask or watch one of my previous videos where I haven't sped it up like so. So, but it was more to show the build. So rather than just going in a lost sector and showing you guys, like, look at this, it does great damage to Carl and stuff, like, I find that like really boring. So if I was to sort of do that myself, I would be a bit of a hypocrite. So I was like, right, what's it like in Grasp? Because Grasp is the weekly dungeon this week. So how does it perform here, this build? Because I saw a couple of clips of people using this machine gun in the team and stuff, like 3 people melting bosses. I was like, I wonder what it's like solo. I had a look on YouTube, couldn't find anyone really utilizing it solo or talking about it in a solo way. This build of volatile rounds with the rapid fire frame machine gun that is Void, which is the Retrofit Escapade, right? Which is a Season of the Seraph weapon. Now, I have not got the bells and whistles one. My role is good for what it is. It's all right because Zen moment target lock. Target lock is the big one. I think it's a 40% damage bonus at all in because it ramps up in damage the more damage you do. But I believe it's 40% all in. That's what I've heard. So that is the perk to go for on this gun. And then the column that I have on Zen moment, you want 4 times the charm. You also want to craft this weapon. Now, I have 0 red borders for this machine gun, but when I start getting them and get all 5, I'll definitely make a video about this machine gun because it's very important. It's a very important machine gun, right? So, craft this weapon. It's one of the best guns in the game right now. It's competing with linear fusion rifle damage. That's how insane it is. So, I've switched to Stompies obviously for that puzzle bit. I recommend you do have a sword on if you want. That really helps out on the Hunter for the jumps if you want to do the skips. On a Warlock and Titan you don't need to do that, but the Hunter suffers. We all know how bad the Hunter jump is without Stompies. So yeah, swap the Stompies for that little bit. When I rally for the first boss, I'm going to use a double machine gun reserve plate and then swap to the Grafalcon chest plate. So that plate I just swapped off at double machine gun. It means I'll get 400 reserves as opposed to 330. It just makes that little bit of a difference for me. If my ammo drops aren't that good as we're doing the fight, then at least I've got a bit more ammo than what I would have had if I hadn't done the double reserves. You may as well. It's not equipment locked in this. You can swap. So especially with a machine gun like this, because you can chew through ammo. So I kill the acolytes as we start, because they get out of my, they get in the way for me in my rotation of how I do things. So get rid of those initial acolytes. You've got the cannon from the initial encounter from the puzzle. I recommend you bring that with you because that will then mean that you can use this cannon for first phase and then you'll have a fresh cannon on phase 2 sitting there waiting for you. I'll show you when he comes up. So when you're going in these doors, obviously the mechanic, I'm sure you know, is that you get your suit back for every 10 riches you pick up. You get the 10 riches, you deposit them in the crystal. You need to deposit on this particular boss 25. Now I have a good habit of counting how many I've done each room. So I deposited 13 there, so on room 2 I need 12. Don't grab more than what you need to, because then that, I've noticed, extends the duration of how long it takes the boss's shield to come down. And stuff like that. Also, it makes you wait at the crystal longer than what you need to. Because if you're not doing DPS, add the crystal, which you generally will be in a team. But on a solo, you're not always. Depending on your weapon loadout and your class you're on, if you're on a Warlock, well, it's a little different. You can do DPS at the crystal. Titan, you might do it differently. But on a Hunter, with this build, I don't want to do DPS at the crystal. So get the right riches. Count your riches each room. It's an easy thing to do, right? It just means you can leave the crystal at the correct time. It means you can get in a position before the boss's shield goes out. So I told you I need 12 for room 2, so I've got that. Use your Mobius Quiver Tether each time, obviously for each room, just for ad clear, because you'll get your suit back as long as you pick up 10 riches. This is where we need to farm up an elemental well. I've got Reap and Wellmaker on, which is perfect on the Void Hunter. So I clear the final lot of Thrall. This is very important for this. If you're going to attempt it, it is very fun, but you need to make sure all Thrall are dead. If not all Thrall are dead, you will probably die during DPS. So as we start, we'll do Witherhoard first. Then we'll dodge to get Volatile rounds going, because you need to go invisible first. Empty one mag, Witherhoard again, jump up over this box, Quiver Tether, a grenade, and then re-up on Invis to re-proc Volatile rounds, and then just spam. Now this is RNG a little bit on how well you're going to do here. I'm getting wrecked. Bear in mind I'm double Void Resist, so my damage could definitely be better here, but because of how low I was, I had to sort of retreat. Now I am convinced you can solo two-phase this boss. I haven't seen anyone do it. That doesn't mean to say that no one has. Like, I mean with this loadout, when I'm saying solo two-phase with this machine gun. If you run Font of Might and you run the whole build, and you maybe find a better angle to take the boss than what I did, where you don't have to stop shooting so much, but you want to be quite close to him because you'll get a little bit of range drop off with the machine gun, because they are rapid fire frames. They're not meant to have much range. I actually spec'd mine for stability, believe it or not, just because you're spraying it and you want to hit as many crits as possible, right? So not only at a Z moment, which is actually quite nice, by no means it's the perk you want to go for when you craft it though. You need the 4th times the charm roll, because then you're going to have a way bigger mag. Obviously put boss spec in the machine gun, don't put backup mag, put the boss spec, because on the Hunter you're going to run Marksman's Dodge, which you saw from my build. It's essential you run Marksman's Dodge. If you don't, this build doesn't work at all. You're not going to get the DPS in good enough. So Marksman's Dodge is a must. It doesn't matter, because I'm not even using Trapper's Ambush as a fragment. As an aspect. I'm using the step. Right? Now, the reason why I'm doing that is because I've got Starless Executioner on, which gives you a rolling chain of volatile rounds. So I'm trying to show that off. So its ability to re-invis you and respec. It's this combat loop of invis, volatile, invis, volatile. But I will be honest, for DPS purpose, it might have been better if I had ran Trapper's Ambush with the dodge, because that's 2 invises that I can go back to back, right? So I can do my step, do that, and then after the volatile is left, quickly do a Trapper's Ambush. That then will re-proc Volatile, and it would just be a little bit better, but the ad clear wouldn't be as good. But you don't really need ad clear in the dungeon. But I'm doing it just to show off the loop, the combat loop, and I imagine people are going to use Starless Executioner with this build, and they'd be right to do it. But I'm just saying, like, you could do a little bit better damage if you sort of just ran Trapper's Ambush and Marksman, and had a better mobility stat than me. See, on this build, it's a must that you obviously need 100% resilience, but a good mobility stat alongside that. And a lot of my Hunter armor pieces are really spec for like recovery, discipline, mobility, but I haven't got a lot of armor pieces, to be honest, where they've got high mobility and high resilience on the same piece. It's quite rare for me, so I had to spec my fragments in such a way for stat distribution. So I was a tier 9 mobility, which is a quick dodge. It means my Marksman's Dodge is going to be pretty good. And obviously I spec'd for stats, the fragments. But I had the key things on, like Echo of Persistence, which gives you an increased amount of invisibility. Now you see the damage we done on phase 2 was better than phase 1 slightly. Again, it's just kind of how how aggro the boss is on you. You must run double void resist on this. I tried this. I was doing some DPS tests solo wise on this boss without void resist, and I was getting killed on damage phases. So I was like, this isn't a viable solo. This I know. So it's only viable when you get double void resist on, just because you're playing a high risk, high reward strat of using this machine gun. But it's stupid fun. Okay, it's the funnest build I've saw in ages for like DPS, like a DPS thing, where it's quite novel, I would say, right? And it's unique to the hunter, and I think it's great. It's fantastic. I love the fact that there's a machine gun build out there that can compete with linears. And this should be the norm. There should be like builds out there that compete with linears. And if they have to go this way about it, where to make an exotic synergize with certain pieces, to like have a weapon type other than linear fusion rifles compete with linear fusion rifles, then do it. Like, you know, machine guns aren't just ag clear weapons. They can do DPS as well. They're not known as a DPS weapon, but in my opinion they should be. Let's have a shake up of the meta a little bit. We haven't had machine guns good since they came out. When they first came out, if people remember, when it was Thunderlord and stuff, right? They were melting bosses, but also ag clearing everything. Right? They were doing everything in the game, which I guess it was a bit overkill. But let's have that for a bit. Let's buff machine guns even more, because you got to bear in mind, I've got solo operative on and weak and clear, which is making the build even better. Without those two mods, my damage wouldn't be nowhere near 3-phase. Right? I would struggle to, well, maybe 3-phase if I ran the font of mine and stuff. This is without solo operative and weak and clear and stuff. So I don't know actually, but to explain why this machine gun is doing the damage it's doing, it's because it's a high fire rate weapon. So I haven't looked up a video to see why, but my educated guess, the reason for it is because every time you shoot a target, it's reprocking the volatile rounds, doing additional damage, whereas like a slow fire machine gun or a slow fire weapon in general won't proc volatile as much as what this weapon would. So a fast fire rate weapon is needed to get the damage in. Not only that, because of target lock. So like I said, it's unique circumstances that all come together, which is why it does the damage it does. You wouldn't find this with like Volta Glass machine gun, corrective measure, right? It's a really good machine gun, we know this, but it's only like a mid fire rate machine gun, so it ain't gonna do as good damage as what Retrofit is doing. Retrofit, because it's fast fire rate, it's got target lock on it, and it's void. Right, and it's working with volatile rounds. Because without volatile rounds, it ain't going to be doing nowhere near the damage. It doesn't do nowhere near as much. But when you combine it all together, it does this special amount of damage. So I'm using the Sparrow, the fastest Sparrow in the game. I understand some people don't have this Sparrow. A lot of people. I've done this little Sparrow encounter with lots of different Sparrows over the years of this being out. So this Sparrow isn't required, but it does make your life easier. But honestly, I could put on any Sparrow and get this done. It's just a case of B and C. You need to make sure you do a bit of ag clear. That's what I always do. That's my little routine. Because what you need to understand is the timer that you see in front of you resets for the next cap point. So you don't get any bonus time just because you've got like 9 seconds left on C. You're not going to get more time for D. So you could clock that down to 2 seconds, cap it, you would still get the same amount of time for D. So you actually have more time than you're thinking. On this little bit, I always go left and pull your Sparrow back. On controller, you would pull your left thumbstick back. On PC, you just pull your Sparrow back, however you do that. And that means that the nose of the Sparrow's going in the air. It gives you more distance. It means you won't crash in the river. Right? Whereas if you aim it downwards, you're not going to get the same distance. Also get that last switch, because if you don't, sometimes you'll miss the last cap point and die. It can ruin a solo flawless. So, anyways, this is this section, the Fallen Shield section. This is like Pirates of the Caribbean theme type thing. A very good encounter, especially day one experience. But since then, this encounter's really worn off. The Grasp of Avarice is a good dungeon overall. It's just that like this encounter slows the pace down a little bit. I understand it's not meant to be super difficult and stuff. It's just that it's something you want to quickly get through as soon as you can to get to the final boss, really. So I'm just establishing where the fallen servitor is, because obviously where the fallen servitor is where you need to begin. That is RNG. The only RNG part that's not RNG is that the first two islands you see, the one you land on and the one to your left, will never have a servitor. It's always the top islands. However, on the fourth servitor, the final phase, you will always have a fallen servitor on the start and two islands. It'll be one or the other. That's always the case. It's just one or the other. So you end it where you started. So you really just want to focus on getting the engrams. Don't do too much out clear in terms of like clearing everything but not picking up engrams, because you're wasting your time. Because by the time you do that, the engrams will explode and then you need to clear more ads. You need 20 riches per crystal. It's quite obvious. There's 20 crystals for here. It was 25 for the Ogre boss, and it's 60 crystals, 60 riches, sorry, for the final boss. That's the most. Which honestly, it ain't that bad when you know the strats. It is quite a lot, but at the same time, it's not too bad. It's just a time sink. That's all. So I've got 18 riches here. There's a captain here. If you clear all ads and you don't have enough riches, there'll be just another ad phase. That's literally it. Another little tip I would say: do not start DPS in the server until he's inside the building. Because if it's like a slope on the opposite side of where you need to roll the bomb might roll down a slope. Like it's not specific to where I am right now, but some areas are different to other areas. If it starts rolling down a slope, you've lost so much time. So let the servitor push you before you kill, and then kill inside, and that way you've got a good starting point just to quickly roll the bomb in the correct direction. Also, make sure the cannon's set up. If you haven't touched the cannon at all, the cannon will be actually set up for you to hit the shield bomb every time. So, but just remember, if you've touched it already, if you get bad RNG, you may have touched the cannon. For example, if I start this encounter in the servitors at the very back of the map island, it's not good RNG, because you know you're going to be filling with a lot of cannons to get to where you need to be, and then you've got to move them all again. So it's a bit RNG based on time a little bit, which I would presume would be a nightmare for speedrunning it for like world record times and all that jazz. Seraph is on the other side. Now I'm on a hunt to the worst jumping class in the game, so we're just going to take our time around. Not the worst jumping class for PvP, actually probably the best, but for PvE, definitely the worst jumping class. The distance between hops isn't enough. I seriously don't understand why they don't just buff the hunter jump. Just buff it. Like the distance and the speed, so you feel a little bit faster on like what you would feel with an arc hunter, a little bit. Well, not quite that, but a little bit, but on all classes. Just in terms of the distance of each jump, it's not quick enough. It's far too slow, which is why you still see people using stompies, even in PvE. It's people that just religiously use the stompies. That's what I think they should do. Buff it up a couple of percentage on all the stats for the particular jump. They could easily do that. That's just a little complaint of mine when I'm playing on Hunter. Don't be afraid to use your tether as well, because you're going to keep getting your tether back, obviously, because of that super mechanic. But yeah, it's just rinse and repeat, really. So there's not, like I said, there's not a lot to really tell you. Another thing that can wipe you is that if you clear the bomb and you're trying to manage the bomb to the cannon, and you still have riches and you forgot that you still have riches, you'll die to that. Obviously, when that timer runs out, you will die. So make sure you deposit all riches before you start dealing with the bomb, because you might get more ads. More ads spawn, like this more ads spawn. I've got enough riches, maybe not on this phase, but Generally you'll have enough riches and then more ads will spawn on top of you as you're putting your riches in, which they'll start shooting at you while you're dealing with the bombs, so it's just a case of, you know, they'll be in your way as well. You'll find they're just in your way to pick up, so sometimes it's just your work just picking it up, quickly depositing them, or just standing close to the crystal. So just always keep a good check that you haven't got any riches going on. Cannon, the bombs lined up. Just need to get the turret, the cannon, sorry. Obviously, just follow the pipe. Bit like the new dungeon, Sparrow the Watcher. You just follow the pipe to where you need to, where it goes. The orange pipe. If you didn't know where the points are, you just need to tap fire them as well when you're doing the bombs. You don't need to hold them down. The charge only when you only hold them down when you're not at the cannon and you need to run there. So you hold it obviously until you get there and then release. 2 more phases left. Here you can see the reproc of Stylish Executioner with the Volatile. So you just reproc on each perk. And if you want to play, you can play aggressive with this and defensive, because what you can do is get a kill. Wait, let invis proc, because if you shoot your gun again, even if it's not an ad, you'll lose invis. So get a kill, let the invis kick in, let your recovery kick in, and then kill the next one. Or you can run a Devour build even. I didn't even bother running Devour because I know how strong this build is and I knew that I didn't need it. Like, I didn't even put fragments on the whole, you know, thing of doing that. Where you generate orbs, which I could have totally done that and ran Harmonic Siphon on the helmet. And generate orbs with Funnel Web, which Funnel Web's obviously another critical part of the build. It's like the best, probably the best void energy to run with this, legendary wise. Because SMGs are just really, like, I wouldn't bother with an ARC rifle, they're too slow compared to SMGs. SMGs melt ads much better, much more efficient. So it literally is, a hand cannon will be too slow, even if it's a fast fire one. Really is the Funnel Web your best choice for this. I was just making sure I didn't have any riches, because the game only shows 4 lines of text. I'm not sure if riches overtakes other lines of text. I suppose it will do, because it's a debuff. But I wasn't 100% there. I think I had more than 4. I think so. That's why I went back to the crystal. So we're on the final island. Like I said before, the final 2 islands will have the server down. So I'm just going to go around. I'm on Hunter. I don't have Stompies on. I could easily obviously put that on. And you can make some jumps without using the cannon basically. Like this jump I'm doing right now, you can actually make it with Stompies and a sword without. So if you wanted to take this machine gun off and run like a sword, like Lament or Fallen Guillotine. Fallen Guillotine melts with this build. I know a lot of people are making the video about Volatile rounds working with this particular machine gun that I'm using, but it melts bosses if you do like the Wither Horde. You invis with the chestplate that I've got on, and then you use Guillotine on a boss. All that combined, maybe combine Lucent Blade. Oh, it's doing massive damage. It's one cycle in any sort of sword-friendly boss you can imagine, apart from the Ogre, right? The only problem with the Ogre on this fight, on a Hunter, is you could do that, where you go Wither Horde and stuff, but... sorry, not Wither Horde, but the Guillotine. But you'll die, the boss will kill you, unless you use Lament, but Lament's solar, so... There would be no survivability. You would end up dying eventually to the Ogre. So unless there was passive guard for swords, but there isn't. It's passive glaive this season, so it's a different mod. It's not the sword one. Another thing that's helping this build out massively with Wither Horde is that it's reloading your machine gun, right? So by the time you do your Wither Horde, like you've done your first mag of damage, your first 95 bullets, and then you switch back to Wither Horde, do that. When you switch back to your machine gun, hopefully it's reloaded. Generally it is. So there's always that as well. So still handy to have Marksman's Dodge on though overall, because then that's immediate. Because it ain't always, you know, that's an immediate reload, and there's no need for gamblers in any case, because you're not using Trapper's Ambush on this particular setup. What our 20 riches, we'll deposit this encounter's done. We're going to be using the same build that we've been using for the entire run on the final boss, which is what I like. So we've used the same build basically. We haven't switched. The only time we've switched is for Stompies. We've switched 0 weapons. The whole dungeon is catered for these weapons, which is good. I generally prefer videos like that where I'm not like switching between all 3 different elements, classes, and this, that, and the other. It works on all of it. I'm interested to see what this will be like for duality. So I'll do some tests with duality just to make sure that the DPS is good for Ketel and Galran. If this damage is good for those 2 and the survivability is there, then I'll do a full duality run with this, right? Plus, I'm excited to run a duality because I haven't run a duality in ages. So I'll be probably using this build. By then I might have the crafted version. I might have a better roll. I might have just a one with the 4th times the charm and everything. So I've got better damage. I'll try and farm the weapon out. We'll just see. But yeah, I'm impressed with it. As I say, I think it's the best build I've saw for ages, DPS wise. And there needs to be more stuff like this happening at a faster rate and more often, season per season, because when stuff like this happens, it puts your mind off the season not being as good as you want it to be, even though this season's actually really good. This season's actually a good 7, 8 out of 10 in my books, because it's got a dungeon. The heist battlegrounds is good to play, right? It is. Heist battlegrounds is good, far better than like last season. The story stuff's better than last season, so it's a good season still. But what I'm saying is stuff like little niche things like this puts your mind off everything, and this is almost like content sort of thing. Well, it is good content. So there needs to be more stuff like this, and if they need to do stuff like that on purpose, shift things a little too powerful, do it. Because it puts your mind off the state of the game, if you know what I mean. So with the final boss, you need to make sure that you're dealing damage to these 2 VIP targets. They spawn every phase. Now this is going to be a solo 3 phase, which is damn impressive with a machine gun, because to be honest with you, linears do that. They might solo 2 phase actually now because of solo operative and stuff. I don't know, I haven't tried linears this season on this boss. I obviously have in the past, and it was a consistent 3 phase. Might be 2, I don't know. But that's what the point of it is, that is very good. The fact that you can actually solo 3 phase with a machine gun. It makes DPS simple. Now you saw in the Ogre fight it was a little bit risky, you know, I was taking a bit more risk. This one it's not at all. Providing that you know what you're doing, you can do DPS safe to this boss. I see a lot of people do damage to the boss in middle and they have problems. Unless you're on Warlock, Well of Radiance. But even then they have problems because they get flinched while they're doing damage and miss crits, which therefore impacts damage. So what I would recommend is do DPS where I'm telling you from. If you're ever struggling with DPS on this boss, then there's a really easy place to do damage. There's a couple of spots, apart from middle. Like I say, there's a lot of people they just stand in middle, and it's generally the wrong play. Unless all ads are killed, and then there's no flinch, then you're fine. What I'm doing here is I'm going in and out of middle with my invis, so I'm waiting for my health to recover fully whilst trying to Witherhoard this sniper. And then I proc some of the volatile rounds, obviously, because I've come out of invis. So that's how I deal with the sniper. As you know, when you're dealing with this sniper on any other class, the sniper's usually the pain, and you see people using the cannon to take down the sniper or switching weapons and all this stuff. Don't use any heavy either, because once you start using heavy, you're going to chew through the extra 70-80 bullets that you get from the double reserve plate. Obviously I've swapped, so don't use any heavy at all until DPS first phase. It'll just help you out just a little bit. So don't be tempted to sort of want to run heavy. You have no benefit of melting that sniper down any quicker. So just use the hardest thing is Witherhoarding the sniper, to be honest. So this is the basis of your operation, right? Obviously there's left, middle and right. You're gonna do all your riches from one side. This is from now the golden standard of strats for this, where you basically shoot both of the little holes to get your riches from here. So you can reach both sides. On the other side, you can't see both sides so well. And what you need to realise is that you can't just keep shooting the one on this side, the one I'm shooting now. You can't shoot that one back to back, because once you shoot it, the cap closes and then another one opens. But on this rotation, you will always have another one to shoot. So what you want to do is have one charging, and as it's charging, you're picking up your motes and then release. And then you've always got a constant feed of riches. Now, I killed the initial VIP target, the Marauder. He drops 10, right? I've got 40 now. I deposit the 40, the 10 earlier, that's 50. I need another 10 because it's 60 in total riches you need. So I do 10, 40, 10. That's my rotation. Pretty simple to do it. On Warlock you can do it. On Titan you can pop a bubble. Warlock you can pop a well. That's the best rotation, I think. It's one of the quickest ways of doing it. You could do 10, 50. Just know that you're going to get sort of melted in middle quite a bit. Whereas if you do the 10, 40, 10, a lot of the ads will be killed. It'll make your DPS smoother. You won't get melted and stuff in middle. Another thing is that you need to realize this strat that I'm doing, where I'm only coexisting on this one section, on this one side, you are actually in fact clearing ads, because what's happening is you are spawning 20 riches, well 20 riches in quick succession on all the sides, because they spawn on the beach and they spawn on the opposite side. But what happens to those riches? They explode, but they kill all the enemies standing on that side, which means you're doing ad clear as well in a funny kind of way. So spawning more riches, the better. Just keep going with it, and it'll just mean it's smoother for later on. It means that the room isn't overwhelmed, because obviously it is infinite ads. Most dungeons are by now infinite waves, but it's not. Just because it's infinite doesn't mean it's all the time. If you clear a side out, that side's clear for a good 40 to 50 seconds or whatever. Right, so we're ready for DPS. I deposit the last 10. I just broke my invis, and this is where you do DPS. But you need to be immediate with it. We've got volatile rounds. We've emptied one mag. We've re-up on Witherhoard. Quiver again. You need to re-dodge. I haven't dodged here, so I've messed my DPS. Have I realised yet? Yeah, I've realised now. Re-dodge to reproc volatile, and then just keep spraying him down. I've obviously got high energy fire. No font of might. That damage is subpar for what I need to do, but phase 2 and 3 we make up for that more than enough. It's just because I didn't reproc volatile by dodging again. After my tether, I need to remember after that rotation, re-dodge. Even if I'm reloaded, it doesn't matter. The point of it is I need to reproc volatile. So you can see the difference between not having volatile and having volatile, the huge difference. But you'll essentially do, if you do a good phase of damage, you'll do 40% of damage to the boss. If you ran font of might, even higher. So you could probably solo 2 phase with the right circumstances and the right setup and all that stuff. But yeah, I didn't even do the font of might setup. I wanted just to see on its own merit really what it was like. I mean, I have got high energy fire on, but that's a much smaller buff as opposed to font. And to get the time anyways out of font, you need to run so many mods that it takes over everything, which I'm not a fan of like running like 4 font of might, 1 elemental time dilation and all this stuff. It really does, I don't know, I'm just sort of not into that. I don't think a build should just revolve around one thing. I really don't, you know, but that's what we're sort of in at the minute with the font of might situation. For me, there's too many timers, there's too many, like, you know, it should be two font of mights maximum. Each font of might gives you 10 seconds per, so 20 seconds maximum or something like that. Or just font of might stacks at 1, it doesn't stack any more than 1, and then you put an elemental time dilation on, doubles the time to 20, and that's it. You can't stack anymore. And then that would simplify mods a little bit better. That way you could run sort of a Font of Might setup whilst also using loads of other stuff, as opposed to like every piece is you know, down to you getting the 30-second Font of Might thing. Use your tether as well if you've got it on the Marauder. Just speeds things up. You may as well. You're going to get tether back anyways because of the riches mechanic. And then it's just rinse and repeat after that. Wait for the cannon guy to come. And then we can go back to our section. So it's just the same again, really. Anytime there's ads on your side, obviously take them out because they're just going to get in your way a little bit. Like I say, once you take them out, they don't spawn in for quite some time. Like I can put in like 40 riches and then they start to come out at that point, which is most of the riches deposited anyway. So I'm only really taking 2 waves of ads out per phase, apart from the VIP targets. Don't get me wrong, if I need to farm up ammo, I will go and explore on the other islands and try to roll the chance at me getting heavy. I found that to be the for this particular run, I was getting enough ammo for the job, just about. The only time when I struggled ammo-wise was on phase 3. Because like it's like this, you're using probably 200 2 mags worth of damage per phase. So it's 200 bullets. I've started with 400, so that'll cover your first 2 phases, really. And then it's just you just need maybe 2-3 purple bricks, and that then will be enough for you to kill a boss. Think about how many shots, linear shots you need, and how much time people have wasted trying to get heavy. The way around it is to run double special. Obviously, if you run double special, you get an increased chance of getting heavy. People think that's just new this season. That isn't new this season. That's been out 4 or 5 years. It's been out years. It's a modifier from D1 that was put in secretly in D2, and they didn't want to admit it a long time ago. Just like they didn't want to admit sprint lock in D1, right? Well, in D2 that's our sprint lock. It's the mechanic of juggler. If you run double primary heavy, you get more heavy. If you run double special heavy, you get more heavy, because there's only 2 ammo types dropping. But also, if you use a different weapon to get a kill, you get the opposite ammo of what you were using. So it is a secret mechanic modifier in the game, and it's on always. They've even admitted that it's bugged at the minute. So eventually they're going to fix it, which is actually kind of bad. Be honest, it's actually not a good thing. If they fix it, ammo economy is actually going to be worse, unless they fix it properly, where you have more ammo when you've got primary, special, heavy. If they fix that where that's more consistent, then that's good. So this is more of a better damage phase than the first phase. It's because we've reprocced Volatile, we've done everything correct. I'll reproc River Horde here. We've used all our ammo basically, and the boss is. We've done a good chunk there, at least 40%, so that's massive damage. And like I say, that's without every buff possible. It's without the god roll of this weapon. So with the god roll of this weapon, you're going to be able to shoot more than what I did, right, and do more damage. And with the enhanced perks, I don't even know what the enhanced perks do. I haven't had a chance to even look. So there's all that to come into it yet. So the weapon is super strong on this build, but only on this build. If I use this forward machine gun on any other setup, it ain't even that good, honestly. It's just your standard rapid fire frame machine. Well, it'll be alright, but it won't be nowhere near to turn to 11 like it is now. So this machine gun is specific to be used on a hunter with this build. Same again, we need to kill these VIP targets. I recommend that you take the sniper out first, because it is tempting just to deal with the marauder first, because the marauder is easier to take out. But if you do that, you're going to have a sniper while you're collecting riches, which is going to be a bit of a problem to you. So the sniper is the only real threat in this. Obviously the boss is a little bit when you go in middle. The boss can actually stomp you off map. Any of the water that you see in this is a death zone. Even if you dip your toes just a little bit, it's a death zone. It's an instant wipe. So anytime you're entering middle, you need to know where that boss is at all times. If you're entering where that boss is, then you need to make a different route to avoid being stomped. On normal grasp, it's not too bad in terms of the damage the boss does, but on master, it's a little bit different. I'm not even using the right resist as well. Obviously, I've got a Void Grafalcon on. The reason for that is because that was from the first fight, and I didn't want to change it to Arc. And also, I don't have two of them to sort of swap to, so I could swap to an Arc one. I only have this one. I've only got this one roll. So, in terms of like putting Arc resist on to help against the enemies, I would recommend at least concussive, or even double concussive, because nothing does void in this. So double concussive, because that will actually help you against arc nades. Even though the nades are arc, they're classed as like splash damage, so that's going to sort of help against those, because you get naded quite a lot. But other than that, as long as you've got that tier 10 resil, nothing's going to hurt you that much, just them grenades. So ammo's 133, the boss is 20%. I would say I do have I probably have enough ammo to kill the boss, but I wanted to just make sure that I did, so I farmed out an extra brick, which I do have ammo finder on, which I still think it's important that you run ammo finders. Not as important as it used to be, because builds are starting to take over gameplay loops. So now these days it's more about the build as opposed to like weapons, which in my opinion it's starting to get towards abilities too much. I always think it should be for a game of this caliber, it should be 60-40. Weapons 60%, abilities 40. It should never be 60-40 for abilities. So it should never be like 60% abilities, 40% weapons, because at the end of the day it is a first person shooter, and weapons should dictate, not subclasses. Subclasses should complement your build and your weapons really well and be effective, but they shouldn't take over the full story. So I feel as though now the problem is builds are getting a little bit too strong. It's like, why kill enemies? I'll just throw a hammer at them. It takes a little bit of difficulty out the game a bit for me. I honestly still preferred 2017 to this. I preferred using weapons a bit more. I'll be honest, the only thing with 2017 is it was double primary, that's what spoiled it, but I'd rather weapons were more effective than builds now, because it's getting a little bit like this build's really good, because I like it because it's focusing on DPS, so this build's okay with me, but it's ability builds that like Arc Titan and stuff, and Solar Titan and Voidwalker, Controverse Hold, it takes over the gameplay loop where it's just you are not incentivized to use your weapons. Save your ammo for DPS, just use your abilities on the ads. I don't like that gameplay loop, I'll be honest, because it is starting to sort of take over a little bit, and that's with the 3.0 builds. But we've had all the 3.0 builds now, so but we're getting strands, so I just see a trend of this game going like 70-80 % abilities, and like you're barely using weapons now because the abilities are too strong. People are on about nerf and well and stuff. I don't think that. What I think is weapons should be center stage of your builds, not so much ability builds all the time. That's my complaint at the minute. Just the percentage between what you're using. We've got our 40 riches. It's rinse and repeat at this point, so like I say, there's not much else I can really tell you. When you're depositing 40, like I say, on other classes you can pop a well, a bubble, you can survive it. On a hunter you're going to need some invis, definitely, because you can see how many nades there. That's where the concussive dampener will help out. If you had arc resist, it would massively help out against that stuff. You can see one invis is more than sufficient to deposit the 40 riches. Make sure you re-up on your charge of light, or your font of might if you're using it. Obviously though, if you're using font of might, you're going to have to perfectly time a well to then go and deposit riches, and then as that timer is depleted, you're losing font of might time. Whereas high energy fire is a fixed time, which is why I'm using it. So it doesn't matter when you start DPS sort of thing, you're still going to have a buff. Maybe not the highest weapon buff, but at least it's something. Obviously, Teva's going to debuff as well, but so will Witherhard. So it's not. I'm not using the Teva in that sense for the debuff of it. It's more for the damage of Morbius Quiver. So run Morbius Quiver. Don't use the single shot Teva. Not in this case. Single shot Teva is really good in certain areas of the game, but when you're solo and you need a high damage, then you run Morbius always, because Morbius does such a high amount of damage, especially with Orpheus Rigs. But I'm not going to switch to Orpheus Rigs because then the machine gun build doesn't make any sense. Make sure you invis before boss takes down shield. That way you're in position ready for damage. That way you're not losing any time. So we'll do the same thing. Witherhard, 1 mag of machine gun. Witherhard again. Morbius Quiver twice. Dodge. Boss is dead at this point. That was a cool build for this. I quite enjoyed it. Hope you enjoy the run. Thanks.